I always thought I was loyal. Ethan and I had been together for 3 years, and on paper, we were perfect. A nice apartment, matching coffee mugs, even the same taste in music. But lately, our connection felt like a plant left in the dark. Technically alive, but brittle and fading. The real shift happened 6 months ago, when Ryan moved in. Ethan's college friend's lease had fallen through, and we had the extra room. Just for a few months, Ethan promised. I agreed. Back then, Ryan was just a name. He wasn't a name anymore. The first time I saw him, he was standing in our doorway with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, wearing a plain white t-shirt that somehow fit like it was tailored for him. He smiled, casual, confident, and I caught myself smiling back before I even thought about it. Ryan was comfortable in his own skin. Too comfortable. Within days, I'd learned he had a habit of walking around shirtless after the gym, his hair still damp, droplets sliding down his collarbone. I told myself I wasn't looking, but I noticed details. The way his towel clung low on his hips, the faint scent of his cologne drifting into the hallway. Ethan noticed something too, though not the same thing. He's a bit much, isn't he? Ethan muttered one night while we were doing dishes. What do you mean? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. He just fills the space. I don't know. I can't explain it. Just keep some boundaries. Boundaries. That word sounded like a locked door. I didn't realize I'd already left mine cracked open. The small moments started stacking up. One afternoon, Ryan and I were brushing our teeth in the bathroom, side by side at the sink. He glanced at me in the mirror and said, with a smirk, "You're lucky Ethan's got you. If I were him, I'd never let you out of bed." I froze with the toothbrush in my mouth. "That's quite a compliment," I said, trying to sound casual. He didn't reply, just rinsed his mouth and left, leaving me staring at my reflection, wondering if I'd imagined the whole thing. Ethan, meanwhile, was slipping further away. He started working late, always another client meeting, another project. When we did see each other, it was small talk over takeout containers, not the kind of conversation that made you feel seen. He wasn't cruel or distant in an obvious way. He was just absent. One Thursday night we had planned dinner, a rare night off for him. I'd set the table, poured wine, even put on the shirt he said he liked. 15 minutes before he was supposed to walk in, my phone buzzed. "Sorry babe. Stuck at the office. Rain check?" The knot in my chest tightened. I typed "it's fine" and set the phone down without sending a follow-up. That's when Ryan knocked on my door. He leaned against the frame, wearing sweatpants and no shirt, hair mussed like he'd just woken from a nap. "Thought I heard the wine bottle open," he said. "Need company?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Sure. Come in." We sat on my bed, legs crossed, passing the bottle between us. He told me about his day. The new girl at his gym, the annoying customer at his part-time job. I laughed more than I'd laughed all week. His knee brushed mine once, twice, and I didn't move away. Somewhere between the second glass and the third I asked, "So, do you date much?" He gave me a slow smile. "When I find someone worth it." I swallowed hard, my heart beating way too fast for a conversation that was supposed to be harmless. The next morning, I overheard something that wouldn't leave my head. Ryan was in the living room, talking on the phone. His voice was low, almost conspiratorial. "If I told you what I saw last week, you wouldn't believe me," he said, then laughed. I couldn't hear the other side of the call, but I froze in the hallway. Was he talking about me? My mind replayed every interaction we'd had, the smirk in the bathroom, the knee brushing mine, the way he'd looked at me last night. That night, I dreamed about him. In the dream, it was late, and I was alone in the kitchen. Ryan came up behind me, close enough that I felt the warmth of his breath on my neck. He whispered something I couldn't quite hear, then his hand slid. I woke up flushed, my chest tight. Ethan was next to me, breathing evenly, completely unaware. I stared at the ceiling, the guilt already heavy, but the truth was heavier. I didn't want the dream to end. The dream had been haunting me for days. Not because it was wrong, though it was, but because it felt so real. Every time I saw Ryan in the hallway, every time I heard him moving around the apartment, I felt that same pulse in my chest. Ethan was still working late nights. That Friday, he left before sunset, dropping a quick kiss on my cheek. "Don't wait up," he said, grabbing his laptop bag. I didn't say I was lonely. I didn't say I was starting to dread the sound of our front door closing behind him. An hour later, I was on the couch, scrolling aimlessly through my phone when Ryan appeared from the kitchen, holding 2 mugs. "Hot chocolate," he said. "I put extra marshmallows in yours. Figured you could use it." I laughed softly. "Why's that?" "Because you've been pacing around here like you're in a prison cell." He sat beside me, close enough that our knees touched. He didn't move them away. Neither did I. We started a movie, something random on Netflix. I couldn't tell you the plot. I could only tell you the rhythm of Ryan's breathing next to me, the way his arm draped casually along the back of the couch. Every now and then, his fingers brushed the back of my neck, just enough to make my skin tingle. Halfway through, he paused the screen. "You're tense," he said quietly. I forced a chuckle. "Guess I'm just tired." "No," he murmured, leaning in, "it's not that kind of tense." My breath caught. The space between us vanished. His eyes searched mine, not asking permission, just daring me to stop him. I didn't. The first touch was his hand on my thigh. Warm, firm, staying there. "Ryan," I said, but it came out softer than I meant. He tilted his head, a small smirk on his lips. "Say it like you want me to stop." I didn't say anything. He moved closer, and suddenly his mouth was on mine, not tentative, not testing, but deliberate. It was everything I'd tried not to imagine. The heat of his lips, the taste of cocoa on his tongue, the faint scrape of stubble against my skin. For a split second I pulled back, guilt flooding in. "I can't," I began, but he interrupted. "You already are," he said. His voice was calm, steady, like he'd been waiting for this. Something inside me snapped. I kissed him back hard. The couch creaked as I shifted, closing the space between us completely. My hands were in his hair before I could think about what that meant. His fingers pressed deeper into my thigh, sending heat rushing through me. Somewhere in the haze, I knew this was the moment I could still stop, still go back to pretending. But the thought of stopping felt like suffocating. We broke apart only long enough for him to breathe, been wanting to do that since I moved in. That confession alone was enough to undo me. I pulled him back to me, and the kiss deepened, slow and hungry like we had all night. But we didn't. The faint sound of the building's elevator doors made me jolt. It wasn't Ethan. He wouldn't be home for hours, but the sudden reminder of the real world made the air heavier. Ryan leaned back slightly, studying my face. "You look like you're about to jump out of your skin." I swallowed hard. "I don't know what I'm doing." "You know exactly what you're doing," he said softly, his thumb brushing my jaw. "You're letting yourself feel something." That line lodged itself in my chest. Because it was true. I'd been going through the motions with Ethan, convincing myself the routine was enough. But this was messy and dangerous and alive. When Ryan finally pulled away, it wasn't because either of us wanted to stop. It was because he leaned in close, his lips just at my ear, and whispered, "If we keep going, we're not coming back from it." He stood, heading toward his room. At the doorway, he glanced over his shoulder with a grin. "Good night, trouble." I sat there, heart hammering, my lips still tingling from his. The movie was still paused on the screen, frozen mid-scene, but I couldn't even remember what we'd been watching. The apartment was too quiet now. In the silence, the guilt finally crept in, the image of Ethan's smile, the way he trusted me completely. I told myself this was just a moment, a slip, that I could bury it and move on. But when I finally got into bed, my phone buzzed. A text from Ryan, "Still thinking about your mouth." I stared at the message until my vision blurred. My thumb hovered over the screen, my mind screaming to delete it. Instead, I typed back, "Me too." Ryan's text haunted me for the rest of the weekend. Every time I passed him in the apartment, my pulse spiked. We didn't talk about the kiss. We didn't need to, it lingered in the air like a scent you couldn't wash away. By Wednesday, Ethan was gone again for another late shift. "Won't be home until midnight," he said, dropping his keys in the bowl by the door. I nodded, pretending to focus on my laptop, pretending my mind wasn't already spinning. An hour later, Ryan knocked softly on my bedroom door. "Got a minute?" I looked up, trying to play it cool. "Yeah." He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, wearing that half-smile that made my stomach tighten. "I've been thinking," he began, leaning against the wall, "about the other night." "So have I," I admitted, my voice low. That was all it took. The space between us vanished. One moment, he was leaning casually by the wall. The next, his hand was cupping my jaw, his lips pressing against mine, deeper, hungrier than before. I told myself I'd stop him. I didn't. My back hit the bed as he leaned over me, his weight warm, his breathing quick. The sound of his laugh, low, almost disbelieving, made my chest ache in a way that wasn't guilt. Somewhere in the haze, I remembered Ethan. The thought should have frozen me. Instead, it made my pulse race faster. The risk made every second sharper. Ryan's hand slid against my hip, pulling me closer. "You have no idea what you do to me," he murmured. "You shouldn't," I started, but the words died when his lips found mine again. The knock of the front door snapped the air in half. We both froze, listening. The clock on my nightstand read 10:17. Ethan wasn't supposed to be home for hours. "Stay here," Ryan whispered, getting off the bed. He stepped into the hallway. I sat up, trying to slow my breathing, trying to decide whether to hide the evidence of what we'd just been doing, though how do you hide flushed skin and swollen lips? Footstep. Low voices. And then, silence. A moment later, Ryan returned, followed by Ethan. My stomach dropped. Ethan stood in the doorway, eyes darting between us. I didn't know what to say. "Ethan," I began, but he held up a hand. He stepped inside slowly, closing the door behind him. "I came home early," he said, his tone unreadable. His gaze landed on me, then on Ryan. Guess I should have knocked louder. My mouth went dry. "It's not." "It is," he interrupted, his voice calm but edged. "I've been watching this thing between you two for weeks." Ryan didn't flinch. He just crossed his arms and leaned against the wall again. "And?" Ethan turned his eyes back to me. "And I'm wondering if you're going to stop pretending you don't want him." I blinked, caught between shame and confusion. "You're not angry?" Ethan's lips curled into something between a smirk and a challenge. "Oh, I'm furious. But I'm also curious." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Curious how?" Ethan stepped closer to the bed, close enough that I could smell the faint trace of his cologne. "Curious enough to see what happens if I don't stop you." The room went still. My heartbeat was so loud I could hear it in my ears. "Ethan," I said, but it came out as barely more than a breath. He looked at me for a long moment, then glanced at Ryan. "Go on," he said. "I want to see it." It was surreal. The same man I'd been hiding this from was now giving permission. But there was nothing forgiving in his eyes. This was control, a test, maybe even punishment. Ryan moved first, stepping back toward me, his hand finding my jaw again. He kissed me, slower this time, deliberate, knowing Ethan was watching. The heat that rose in my chest was almost unbearable. I couldn't look at Ethan, but I could feel his presence, steady, silent, unblinking. Ryan pulled back just enough to whisper, "Guess he's not stopping us." Ethan finally moved closer, his hand brushing my shoulder. It was a familiar touch, but it felt charged, different, as if the air between the three of us had rewired itself completely. No one said anything after that. The tension wasn't just sexual, it was territorial, daring, dangerous. And then, just as quickly, Ethan stepped back, heading for the door. "I'll be in the living room," he said, glancing over his shoulder. Don't keep me waiting. The door closed, leaving me breathless, my mind racing with questions I didn't have time to answer. Ryan grinned down at me. Well, he said, that's one way to get caught. The apartment was unnervingly quiet. Ryan had slipped out of my room after Ethan's parting words, leaving me alone with my heartbeat. My skin still felt warm from his touch, but my thoughts were a mess, tangled between guilt, adrenaline, and a dangerous curiosity about what Ethan actually wanted. I found him in the living room. Ethan was sitting on the couch, leaning back like a man who'd been waiting for this moment far longer than I realized. His gaze flicked to me briefly before returning to whatever was on the TV. You're quiet, he said. I don't know what to say, I admitted. Then don't. Just listen. His voice was calm, too calm. That was worse than anger. I'm not naive, Liam. I've seen the way you look at him. The way he looks at you. At first I thought it was harmless, but then I realized you weren't going to stop. He glanced at me again. So I had to decide, do I end it, or do I control it? The word control landed heavily between us. I don't understand, I said. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Tonight was unexpected, but not unbearable. I'm not saying I liked watching you kiss him, but I also didn't hate it. That's why we're going to set rules. Rules, I repeated. He nodded. If you're going to keep playing with him, it happens here. Under my roof. And I know about it. No lies, no secrets. I stared at him, unsure if this was some elaborate trap. And if I don't agree? Then Ryan moves out tomorrow, and we pretend none of this ever happened. But we both know you won't choose that. I hated that he was right. The sound of the kitchen faucet broke the moment. Ryan was rinsing a glass, acting like this was just another Wednesday night. Ethan raised his voice slightly. Ryan, come here. Ryan appeared in the doorway, leaning casually against the frame. Yeah. Ethan gestured toward me. I told him the rules. He hasn't said yes yet. Ryan smirked. Oh, he'll say yes. Don't, I warned, my voice sharper than I meant. But Ryan just shrugged. Ethan stood, closing the distance between us. This doesn't have to be a disaster, Liam. It can be a whatever we make it. But you need to decide right now. I looked between them, the man I'd promised myself to, and the man who'd cracked me open in ways I didn't see coming. Yes, I said finally. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly, like he'd just confirmed a theory. Good. Then we start with one more rule. You don't get to touch him unless I'm in the room. Ryan chuckled under his breath. That's going to be fun. The night ended without another word. Ethan went to bed. Ryan disappeared into his room. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of what had just unfolded. The control in Ethan's voice, the heat in Ryan's touch, and the realization that this wasn't over. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee. Ethan was at the counter, making breakfast like it was any other day. Ryan was perched on a stool, sipping from a mug, watching me with that same unreadable grin. Morning, Ethan said without looking up. Morning, I replied, my voice still hoarse from too little sleep. We ate in a strange, loaded silence. Every glance felt like a test. Every brush of Ryan's knee against mine felt like breaking a law that Ethan had just written. When Ryan left for the gym, Ethan finally spoke. You need to understand something, Liam. This isn't about giving you freedom. It's about me choosing not to lose you. I met his eyes, searching for anger. Instead, I found something else, possession. For the rest of the day, the apartment felt like a chessboard. Ethan watched me. Ryan watched Ethan. And I was caught somewhere between being a pawn and the prize. That night, while Ethan was in the shower, my phone buzzed. A message from Ryan. Rules are meant to be broken. I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the screen. I could almost hear Ethan's voice in the back of my mind. No lies. No secret. But my pulse betrayed me. I started typing, when? I deleted it. Typed it again. Deleted it again. Then finally, without giving myself time to think, I hit send. The reply came instantly, tonight. I sat there, staring at the word, the sound of the shower still running in the background. In that moment I realized something. This wasn't just about temptation anymore. This was a game, one that all three of us were playing, but none of us had any idea how it would end.